My family forced me to buy them a house, but when I discovered they used my money to rent another apartment while my sister lived for free, I stopped paying, and the bank took everything. I'm 28 years old, I work in tech, and I basically just lost an entire house because of my family. But the truth is, it was the best decision I've ever made, even though it sounds completely insane. I need to tell this story because I've been processing it for months, and there are still days when I wake up wondering if I did the right thing. But then I remember everything that happened, and I know I did. Definitely did. I guess I should start from the beginning so it makes sense. I grew up in a family that was always kind of weird about money. I mean, my parents, Deborah and Kenneth, never had super stable jobs, but we weren't poor either. You know, we were that middle class that lives paycheck to paycheck, basically. My sister, Courtney, is 3 years younger than me. She's 25 now, and since we were kids, it was obvious she was the favorite. I don't know if it was because she was the youngest or because she was more manipulative, probably both. I was the responsible kid, the one who got good grades, the one who helped around the house, and Courtney was the one who could do whatever she wanted without consequences. When I was like 16 and she was 13, I remember she skipped classes for an entire week to hang out with her friends at the mall, and my parents basically told her not to do it again, and that was it. While they would ground me for coming home 15 minutes late, things got more obvious when we got to high school. I worked part-time at an electronics store while studying because I wanted to save for college, and Courtney decided school wasn't her thing and just stopped going senior year. My parents were upset but didn't really do anything. Like they told her to look for a job but never forced her, and she just stayed home basically doing nothing. I graduated, started looking for options to study something computer-related because I always liked that. And I found a technical program that was cheaper than traditional college, but still cost money we didn't have. This is where the whole money thing with my parents started. Kenneth, my dad, sat me down one day and said, "Look, Nathan, we sacrificed a lot for you guys. We worked hard our whole lives. And now that you need something for your future, we expect you to return the favor later." I was 18 and didn't really understand what he meant by return the favor. But I said, yes, obviously, because my parents were going to help me pay for tech school. They got me a small loan, and they put in some of their savings, and I worked full-time while studying to cover my expenses and help with tuition. It was 2 intense years. I slept like 4 hours a night, but I graduated with a certificate in software development and got a decent job almost immediately. My first job paid well. It wasn't Google or anything, but it was enough to live comfortably, and I moved into an apartment with 2 roommates because I wanted to start being independent. Courtney at that point was like 22 and still living with my parents. No job, no studies, nothing. My parents were completely supporting her, and when I'd ask them why they didn't make her work or study something, Deborah would always tell me that Courtney was different, that she needed more time to find her path, that I was stronger and more responsible. I swallowed the frustration because I didn't want to cause problems, but inside it bothered me that I had to work myself to exhaustion while she did absolutely nothing. About 2 more years passed. I was 24 now, and my career was going well. I got a better position at another company, and my salary increased quite a bit. I was saving money for the first time in my life. I had plans to eventually buy my own place, maybe travel a little, enjoy things a bit after years of hard work. But then my parents started with the hints. Kenneth would mention every time I saw him that they were tired of renting, that landlords always raised the rent, that they deserved to have their own house after working so hard. Deborah constantly reminded me that they paid for my school, even though I also worked and put in money, that they gave me a roof for years, that family supports each other. At first I'd just nod and change the subject, but the hints became more and more direct. One day, when I was 26, we were having dinner at their rental apartment, and Kenneth just said it without beating around the bush. "Nathan, your mother and I want you to buy us a house." Just like that. I was frozen with my fork halfway to my mouth, like, what? And he continued, "You have a good job, you're earning well, you don't have kids or a wife, you can qualify for a mortgage. We're already old and tired of renting." I told him, "Dad, I also rent. I have roommates. I don't even have my own house." And he told me exactly. That's why. Because I was young. I could sacrifice a little more, that they sacrificed their whole lives for us. That night, I left there feeling horrible, like with a knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. Over the next few weeks, the pressure increased. Deborah would call me crying, saying the landlord was going to raise the rent again, that they were going to have to move to a worse place. How could I allow my parents to live like that? Kenneth would send me messages reminding me of everything they had done for me: school, food, shelter, everything. Courtney didn't even work to help them with rent, but somehow I was the bad son for not wanting to buy them an entire house. The guilt was killing me. Honestly, I started looking at houses just to see what was available, thinking maybe I could find something super cheap that wouldn't completely destroy my savings. I found a house in a suburban area that needed some repairs, but was livable, and the price was within what I could manage if I used all my savings for the down payment and committed to a hefty mortgage. I talked to my parents, showed them the house, and they were super excited, promising they'd help me with the monthly mortgage payments, that Kenneth was going to look for more hours of work, that this was temporary until they stabilized. I was 27 years old when I signed the papers. I used literally all my savings, every penny I had saved in years of hard work, for the down payment on that house. The monthly mortgage was high, but manageable, if my parents contributed like they promised. I gave them the keys and they moved in immediately, super happy, thanking me a lot. I stayed in my shared apartment with roommates, paying rent there and the mortgage on my parents' house, basically unable to save anything because all my extra money went to those payments. The first few months were okay. Well, not okay because I was constantly broke, but at least my parents seemed happy in their house. They'd send me photos of the repairs they were doing. Kenneth painted some walls, Deborah planted flowers in the garden, and I told myself it had been worth it to see them happy. But around 4 months in, I noticed Courtney was appearing a lot in the photos they sent me. I asked my mom and she told me, "Oh yeah, Courtney comes to stay a few days because her friend she was living with moved and she needs a temporary place." Temporary became permanent very quickly. Courtney basically moved into the house I bought. She had her own bedroom, used the internet I paid for, ate the food my parents bought with the money they were supposedly going to use to help me with the mortgage. When I asked them about this, Kenneth told me, "Well, she's part of the family too. You're not going to leave her on the street, right?" And I said, "But Dad, she's 24 years old. She can work. She can rent her own place." And he just looked at me like, "You're disappointing me, Nathan." I kept paying the mortgage religiously every month, sometimes making extra payments when I could to try to pay down the principal faster. My parents occasionally gave me some money, like $200 or $300, which wasn't even close to what they'd promised. But I accepted it without complaining because I didn't want to cause conflict. Courtney, of course, didn't contribute anything, didn't even offer. And when I'd hint that she should look for work, they'd tell me I didn't understand how difficult it was for her, that she had anxiety, that she hadn't finished school, that she needed family support. Then came the moment that basically changed everything. I was like 27 and a half. It was a regular Tuesday. I got to my apartment after work and saw I had several messages from an unknown number. It was someone asking about the house for rent, saying they'd seen the listing and wanted to schedule a visit. I was like, "What listing? What is this person talking about?" I searched for the house address online and, sure enough, it appeared on a real estate site as available for rent, with photos and everything. I called my dad immediately. My hands were shaking as I dialed because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Kenneth answered, super casually, and I said, "Dad, why is the house for rent?" And there was an awkward silence before he said, "Oh yeah, we were going to tell you. We decided to move to an apartment closer to work. It's more convenient." I said, "You moved? When? And who's supposed to rent the house?" And he said like it was nothing, "We're not going to rent it, Nathan. Courtney is staying there. The listing was a mistake." I went to the house that same night, drove like crazy because I needed to see with my own eyes what was happening. I knocked on the door and Courtney opened. She was in sweatpants watching Netflix, super comfortable in my house, the house I bought with my savings. I asked her where our parents were, and she told me they moved like 3 weeks ago to a smaller apartment, that they told her she could stay there because it had more space. I asked her if she was going to pay rent or the mortgage, and she literally laughed and said, "Nathan, don't be ridiculous. I don't have a job. You know, family supports each other." I sat, on the living room couch, my living room technically, and I said, "Courtney, this house cost me all my savings. I'm paying a huge mortgage every month, living with roommates while you have an entire house to yourself. Don't you see how unfair this is?" And she shrugged and told me that was between me and our parents, that she hadn't asked me to buy the house. She was technically right about that, but it made my blood boil anyway because she was completely benefiting from my sacrifice without any appreciation or intention to contribute. I called my parents that night demanding a real explanation. Deborah told me, "Nathan, calm down. This is temporary. Courtney needs stability, and you as siblings should support each other." I said, "Mom, I've been supporting this family since I was 18. I worked during school, paid my expenses, bought an entire house for you. When is it enough? When do I get to receive support?" And she started crying, saying I was being selfish, that they gave me life, that I owed to them everything. Kenneth was worse. He told me I was ungrateful, that any decent son would be happy to help his family, that he worked jobs he hated for years to feed us, and I couldn't make this small sacrifice for my sister. Small sacrifice, he said, as if it wasn't literally all my life savings and a 30-year financial commitment. After that call, I stayed up all night thinking. I reviewed my bank statements, my mortgage payment records, everything. And that's when I discovered something that made me feel physically sick. The months when I made extra payments on the mortgage, thinking I was paying down the principal faster, coincided exactly with the months when my parents moved to their new rental apartment. Basically, I was paying for their new rent without knowing it. They'd tell me they needed more money for house repairs or emergencies. I'd send extra money like the idiot I was, and they used it to finance their new, more comfortable life while leaving the house free to Courtney. I felt betrayed in a way I can't even describe. It wasn't just the money, it was the manipulation, the lies, the fact that they watched me work to exhaustion and sacrifice my own stability and thought it was okay to squeeze me more. For days, I couldn't even eat. Well, I had that constant knot in my stomach. I had trouble concentrating at work. I made a decision. Courtney had to start contributing at least half the monthly mortgage or move out, and they had to pay me back the extra money they used for their apartment. Kenneth started yelling at me on the phone, saying how dare I put conditions on my own family, that I was betraying them. Deborah was crying in the background, saying I had changed, that money had made me cruel. I gave them 1 month. 1 month for Courtney to find a job and start paying, or move out so they could rent the house to someone who would actually pay and help me with the mortgage. During that month, I received exactly 2 payments of $150 from Courtney, which didn't even cover a quarter of the monthly mortgage, and when I'd ask for the rest, she'd ignore me or tell me she was looking for work. But everything was very difficult. Then I did something I know sounds extreme, but I was desperate and furious. I just stopped paying the mortgage, completely. Not 1 more cent. The bank started sending me notifications, warnings, calls, and I ignored them all. My parents called me hysterical, saying we were going to lose the house, and I told them exactly, "That's the idea. I can't continue with this anymore." Courtney sent me furious messages. How could I do this to her? Where was she supposed to live? I responded the same thing she had told me months before. That was her problem. Nobody asked her to live there for free. Kenneth called me yelling that I was going to ruin my credit, that it was a stupid decision, and I told him, "Dad, my credit can recover. My relationship with my family apparently isn't worth saving anyway." But the next few months were horrible. I'm not going to lie. The bank initiated the foreclosure process, they put notices on the house, and eventually auctioned it off. Courtney had to move out, ended up back with my parents in their small apartment, and they had to move to an even cheaper place because now they had to support her too. My credit was destroyed, obviously, but honestly, I felt enormous relief. During that whole process, maybe 6 months total from when I stopped paying until they officially lost the house, my family bombarded me with messages. Some furious, others massive guilt trips, some trying to make me feel guilty with stories about how hard it was for Courtney, about how I was destroying the family. I eventually blocked them all because I couldn't keep reading that garbage while trying to rebuild my life. I lost the house, obviously, and all the down payment I'd given, all those years of savings just gone. But something changed in me, during that process. For the first time in my life, I stopped feeling responsible for my family's problems. I stopped carrying the guilt my parents had made me feel since I was a teenager. I moved alone to a small studio. No more roommates, just me. And even though it was tiny, and not as nice as I dreamed of having at this point, it was mine. Paid with my money, with nobody else having access or expectations. I started therapy too, something I should have done years before. My therapist helped me see all the patterns of manipulation and favoritism I had been normalizing my whole life. She helped me understand that setting boundaries didn't make me selfish or a bad son, it made me a person with self-respect. My parents tried to contact me a few more times during the past year. Deborah sent me a message at Christmas saying family should be together. Finally got a part-time job at a coffee shop, and we should celebrate it together as a family. I didn't respond to any of them. Not because I'm trying to punish them, but because I honestly have nothing to say to them. Last week I was renewing my apartment lease, the same studio where I've lived this year, and my landlord offered me a discount on rent if I renewed for 2 more years. I signed without thinking twice. My credit is slowly improving. I'm saving money again. Not much, but something. And for the first time in years, I can breathe without feeling like all my money belongs to someone else. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh, if I should have tried something else before letting the bank take the house. But then I remember Courtney living there for free, while I worked 50 hours a week to pay for her roof. My parents using my extra money to finance their new apartment. All the times they made me feel guilty for wanting something for myself. And I know I did the only thing I could do to get out of that situation. I don't have a family now, at least not the family I grew up with. But I have peace of mind. I have financial stability even if modest. And I have the freedom to build my life without constant guilt. Maybe someday they'll understand why I did what I did, or maybe not, but honestly, it's not my problem anymore. I learned that family doesn't give you the right to exploit someone indefinitely, and that it's okay to walk away when all you get in return for your sacrifice is more demands. I guess that's it. End quote. Remember Gascon in the scene. I lost a house but got my life back, and looking at it now, it was the best trade I could have made.